What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about conscious living and how we can start to expand our thinking, getting thoughts that are more in alignment with who we are in Christ, love, harmony, the fruits of the Spirit, demonstrating those more and more so with our life. And, now's when that starts. And so it's either you're doing that and consciously living, or you're just living in the past. You're living in the fear of the future, fear of the past, the regrets and shames of all the woulda, coulda, shouldas. All this drama, and thinking small things, thinking, thoughts that are ultimately not even true, and a lot of matrix programming, slave-mindedness. Letting go of all that has a time and place. But once you've really worked through a lot of that drama, you start to move into the next chapter of things and this progression, that becomes more and more conscious thought, moving your mindset in a direction that feels better and better. It's a healing process. So it's like, where in the old mindset, it was like constantly just getting these, oh, what about this fearful thing, what about this thing to be hysterical about, oh, did you see what was on the news, it's definitely Armageddon. And so it's like, getting all of these types of drama-filled things, this hysterical mindsets, just letting go of those, choosing to become conscious is one of the first steps in breaking out of those cycles. But ultimately, it depends on your relationship with God, which is the most important part of this process, is strengthening that bond, and growing your faith, which is the antidote to fear and hysteria in a lot of ways. Is the chaos mindset starts to become more and more in alignment with like God's laws, and realizing that things are not an accident or a coincidence of why they're happening, and that everything that's being brought to you, whatever's being manifested, has its roots in your relationship with God. And there's some symbolic way to either process it, interpret it as you're moving through it, and realizing that, everything that's going on, kind of, I wouldn't say become detached to it, but look at it through a lens of only love is real. So it's like, even when something is very triggering or fucking like, oh my, what the fuck, it's like watching someone you love die, or some progression of some illness that just gets fucking worse and worse, and then they die, or just whatever the drama is. Instead of just becoming reactive, hysterical, which doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't help the person that's like dealing with their own dramas, having to deal with like what they're dealing with, but then having this other person wanting to dump their entire fucking bag of trauma onto to the other person then too, and then it just becomes a shit show. You see that a lot in just fucking families that are dealing with some drama. It's just people just coming butting heads. That's like my experience, at least. I don't know, maybe there's more harmonious people out there, but yeah, some of that stuff becomes difficult, to say the least. But moving out of those kinds of like judgments of things, getting more into like, okay, I might feel uncomfortable, I'm going to face this fear, instead of doing what the slave mindset does, which is pretty cowardly. It's like, oh, I'm never going to face this ever. It's too painful to feel an emotion. It's like, once you become like more in practicing of being mindful and present, you realize that thoughts are just thoughts. The emotional energy, especially when it's a fearful thought, which is a lot of times just the unknown, fears, all the fears, that really, when you focus those on like actually fearing God, for example, trigger, how dare you fear, how do you fear love? And it's like, well, you already do. It's like, it's not like you have to, it's like you already do, because you're afraid of death. And like, what you fear, you have a, like, then unconsciously, it's like it starts drawing the shit closer and closer to you the more that you have a fear about it. And once you like face fear enough, though, you start to realize that it exists in the mind. It's imagining, it's a possibility, and especially if you're in the identity of a slave, which we were, which was cursed. It's very normal to be cursed and having bad shit happening. That's part of like that state of consciousness. It's a reality of that, and then as we identified with that reality, and those beliefs and assumptions and all that kind of shit, that becomes then projecting, into our life. Well, and then we keep walking into these same fucking cycles of it, and just dealing with the same drama and the same energy and the same chaos and whatever's, and so there's like, it's rational to have a fear of that reoccurring in the present moment, until you start to really unpack how that even manifested, because it's ultimately the law of this of consciousness, has this effect. So it's like the more that you're able to connect the dots looking backwards and really connect with like the mindset that you're carrying as these types of things manifested, well, a lot of it just stems from unconscious living. So moving forward into conscious living is letting go of this, like, oh, I constantly need to fill my consciousness with what ifs and worst case scenarios to keep myself safe from danger, and just trust that God keeps you safe from danger, and that God is not separate, some like judge, condemning, like, I don't want to say even like evil, but like, that's like a perception like I used to kind of have, where it's just like, God in the clouds, some old man in the sky with like maybe like a judge outfit on, that's just like waiting for you to just break one of his numerous unfulfillable fucking things that were just impossible. it's like I'm breaking every single rule before breakfast, just by just like breathing, so it's like but it's like, part of like that fear though, in facing that fear with your creator, is letting go of a lot of those illusions of separateness, and looking towards Jesus as like the example, and just like a really good mirror into God's will, God's mind, all of these things, and it's all, something that you can develop your awareness and knowledge of as you connect in consciousness. But in the here and now, moving, as that example, an external example, the Bible really, and Jesus' own teachings of like the kingdom of God being within you, really starts pointing you inwards as the source for your connection with our Creator. And so that external thing, that imagining of our Creator, starts to change as we change our consciousness, and as we change that then reflects in all of the aspects of our life. And so consciously living, involves stewarding what you have, which is taking a big inventory of like maybe your marriage, your health, your finances, your wealth, all of this shit, your temperament, your just like your state of being, how often can you spend the present moment in a state of peace, without some nagging thing shaking your peace. It's like, how long can you develop that? Could you go maybe an hour, where it's just like, just totally just in a trusting mode of not fearing, not really fretting for anything, because you trust your Creator. Is like, how long can you do that? And then start to evolve that, start to progress in that, because it's only ever now. So whether you're alive or dead, it's like this notion that a lot of us carry of like, oh, well, you die and then it all just makes sense. It's all the drama is just like, I'm just a perfect thing without any type of like the light switch goes on. And that probably does happen because you're connected, you're always one with God. And so, maybe the veil comes off and just all of that stuff, just like instant realization, maybe. I'm not going to, not everything is possible as far as I'm concerned, but, it's also possible that, this is it, this is, the hologram of the physical world, because we already enter a ethereal realm every day when we sleep. It's like we already go into this absolute, where anything is possible, and it's normal that things can just be like, oh, I'm walking around and I'm riding a freaking pony unicorn thing, and now it's flying, and now all of a sudden I'm in a weird apartment building and I'm being stalked by like a gang. It's like what? But like getting back to like consciously kind of living, it's once you let go of a lot of the fear and hysteria, what's left is like, okay, well, you know, God's the only power, and it's like your knowledge of God starts to increase, which is like another way of saying law and love. It increases, so you understand how this dynamic is working between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind, and then this projection into like the situations of your life and the world you're living in, your perception of it at least, and the demonstration of these different areas. It's like as your faith becomes more and more just like a knowing, it's like there's like a natural leveling up that happens in like the physical then too. So it's like the more that you're trusting God, for example, like in your business, like the more, like, for one, at peace you are with like where things are at in your business, because you understand that it's God's business, and it's like you're just taking care of what you have. And it's like if you can't take care of what you already have, more obligations and shit to move around and do isn't going to work, because it's like I can't even handle the shit going on now, so more of that is just going to make me actually probably more unconscious, and just become reactive, tense, fearful, hysterical, so it's like look at everything that you have as being exactly, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, what you can handle without becoming unconscious and starting to hurt yourself and others in your thoughts, your words, your deeds, all them things. Your thought life is incredibly important, because most of the time in the slave mindset is a lot of it's attack thoughts and just like vengeance towards others and looking at things as being separate from ourselves. And so it's like you get jealous of others because they are demonstrating something, and then you feel like you can't have that or do that because they're like superior on this pedestal that you're not on this pedestal. It's like, oh, they're part of like this special group of people. I'm not special, and again, those are limiting beliefs and assumptions that are fucking something to let go of. And in conscious living, that's what you are doing. You're letting go of that kind of these limiting thoughts, and so it's like it almost becomes almost, I wouldn't say fun, but it's like you get a limiting thought like that of like, oh well, some people are just born lucky, and I'm not lucky. Well, that, like, you recognize that you just had this thought that was unconsciously just going. So like, do you want to continue thinking that way, that people are just born lucky, or do you want to think in alignment with the promises of God, that everything that people have is from God, including what you have, and so it's like if God gave that to them, why wouldn't God give it to you? You're already one with that thing, because it's about recognizing this connectedness then too, because that's a big part of the change from slave mind to mind of body of Christ mind. It's like, or I don't know how you want to say that, like biblically or whatever, but like thinking in terms of like connectivity and oneness. You realize you get what you give. And that's another thing that, it's like the slave mindset is like, oh, if I give, I lose something. It's gone. I sacrificed it. But then like the flip side of that is like, no, it's like when I give something, I actually get something back. It's like if you want, like, for example, money, you start spending it. As counterintuitive as that sounds, it's like, as you just trust that you're giving it to yourself, press down and multiplied, it'll come back to you. You start to experience that reality, and I've proved it through my own business. I've demonstrated it. It's like, to me, I it's like water's wet, and that's just what it is. But for others that are still learning these things, it's like, oh, it's just fucking fearful. It's terrifying. That feels like death. Sacrifice, it feels like death. It's like, well, you're not even sacrificing. It's a belief that you believe that's just not even true. It's like, it's like, oh, I don't want to drink water because I don't know how to describe it, but you get what I'm saying. But I think I'm gonna balance. I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention, your awareness. Hopefully it's something you can put into practice yourself. and start consciously living more and more so in the here and now, because that's the only time you are living now. And so it's like, unless you have some bit of like conscious direction in your mind, you're just drifting. It's like you're drifting through trauma to trauma to trauma with no like direction. It's like you know you start by accepting the here and now, whatever is going on, and that's your starting spot. You're always starting now. And as you realize that, you realize that you're already conscious. That's the biggest thing. It's like realizing, like, because don't want to like also contribute to it, but it's like, oh, this process of awakening. But the process is like realizing that you're already like that. You're already awake. Yeah, all these assumptions that you're not awake. These are the things that you're letting go of. These, oh, that must be the ego. That must be, that couldn't possibly, be part of God's design, for creation. It's like sitting there just making all these judgments, and oh, I know best. I know what's going on. It's like never in a million years thought everything was connected. It's like it's just something that you start to learn through seeing it. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like a big mirror. All right, but yeah. With that being said, I think I'm about. So appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial and just physical support in general. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And until the next now, God bless.